I always knew the day would come when I'd have to burn my family to the ground. I just didn't expect it to start with a notification from Credit Karma. My name is London, and I've spent 28 years being the family disappointment. The daughter who couldn't measure up to her brilliant brother Mason, future doctor and golden child extraordinaire. At least, that's what everyone thought.
London, honey, could you at least try to look interested? Mom's voice cut through my thoughts at our weekly family dinner. We're planning Mason's graduation party. I stabbed at my overcooked chicken, forcing a smile. Sorry, just tired from work. Oh, yes, your little accounting job. Mom waved her hand dismissively. Speaking of money, we'll need everyone to chip in for the party. It's going to be quite the celebration. Dad cleared his throat. Virginia, maybe we should... Abraham, please. Our son is graduating medical school. In Europe. This isn't the time to be stingy. I took a long sip of wine. How much? Well, we're thinking of renting the Grand Plaza Hotel ballroom, with catering, decorations, and the string quartet Mason requested. Mom pulled out a notebook filled with her meticulous planning. About 5,000 per person should cover it. I nearly choked. 5,000? Mom, that's insane. London, she snapped. Your brother has worked incredibly hard. He deserves this. Yeah, about that. I pulled out my phone, opening the email I'd received that morning. Funny thing happened today. I got a notification about a charge at some place called Club Paradiso in Madrid, 4,000 euros, on my credit. The room went silent. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Must be a mistake, Dad mumbled, suddenly very interested in his green beans. That's what I thought too. So I called the bank. I looked directly at Mom. The charge was approved using my social security number and my maiden name, but I've never been to Spain. Mom's face tightened. Well, clearly there's been some identity theft. You should be more careful with your information, London. Right. Identity theft. I stood up, gathering my things. I should go. Big day at work tomorrow, counting all my little numbers. London, Dad called after me, but I was already heading for the door. In my car, I pulled up the Credit Karma app again. The Spanish club charge was just the beginning. There were credit cards I'd never opened, loans I'd never taken, all traced back to Madrid, where my perfect brother was supposedly studying medicine. My phone buzzed. A text from my cousin Yara. You okay? Aunt Virginia just called my mom ranting about you making a scene. I typed back. Remember when we were kids and you said Mason was full of shit? I think I finally have proof. 3 dots appeared, then, come over, bring wine, and screenshots of everything. As I drove to Yara's, another notification popped up. A new charge, this time from a luxury car rental in Barcelona. Under my name, of course. My whole life, I'd been the shadow to Mason's light. The practical accountant versus the brilliant doctor. Every birthday, every holiday, every family gathering was a reminder of how I'd failed to measure up. Mom had even started a tradition of giving Mason a gift on my birthday. To make sure he didn't feel left out, I'd swallowed it all. The comparisons, the criticism, the constant pressure to be more like your brother. I'd smiled through the mortgage refinancing to pay for his tuition, nodded when Mom insisted I cancel my vacation plans because Mason needs new equipment for his residency. But now I had something concrete. Numbers don't lie. It's the first rule of accounting. And these numbers told a story of fraud, theft, and years of calculated deception. My phone buzzed again. Mom. I expect you to apologize at next week's dinner. And please bring your contribution for the party. Mason specifically requested that champagne fountain. I turned off my phone and pressed the accelerator. The time for being quiet, reliable London was over. They wanted a family celebration? Fine. But this party was going to have one hell of a surprise ending. First, though, I needed to figure out exactly how deep this rabbit hole went. Good thing I'm an accountant. Following money trails is what I do best.
and Brother Dearest had left quite a trail to follow. I pulled into Yara's driveway, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Time to dethrone the golden boy, I whispered to myself. Let's see how well your medical degree holds up under audit. Holy shit, Yara whispered, scrolling through my credit report. How did no one notice this before? We sat cross-legged on her living room floor, surrounded by laptops, wine bottles, and printed bank statements. 3 hours into our investigation, and the picture was getting uglier by the minute. Because I trusted my family, I said, taking another sip of wine. Never bothered checking my credit until that Spanish club charge triggered the alert. Yara grabbed her laptop. Okay, let's start with the basics. What's the name of his medical school again? Universidad Central de Madrid. I pulled up the email Mom had forwarded to the entire family last year, announcing Mason's clinical rotations. Though I'm starting to wonder if that's even real. It's real, Yara said, typing. But their website has a student verification system. She clicked through several pages. Want me to check? My heart pounded. Do it. Yara typed Mason's name into the search field. The system loaded for a moment, then displayed a message in Spanish. What's it say? Hold on. She copied the text into a translator. No student records found matching this name and date of birth. I felt sick. Try variations of his name? Nothing. We tried every combination we could think of. The school had never heard of Mason Garcia. Maybe... I hesitated. Maybe try my name? Yara's eyes widened. She typed London Garcia into the system. This time, a record appeared. There's an ID number registered, she said quietly. But it was deactivated 3 years ago due to academic dishonesty and fraudulent documentation. The room spun. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking as I dialed the international number listed on the university's contact page. Hello? A woman answered in accented English. Universidad Central de Madrid. Hi, I'm calling about a student verification. I tried to keep my voice steady. My brother is supposedly graduating this year, and we're planning his party. Name? Mason Garcia. One moment. Keys clicked in the background. I'm sorry, we have no record of this student. What about London Garcia? A pause. Yes, this student was enrolled briefly but was expelled in 2020 for falsifying documents and academic misconduct. Are you calling about the outstanding fees? I hung up, bile rising in my throat. He used my identity to enroll, then got kicked out 3 years ago. Yara was already pulling up Mason's Instagram. Look at the timestamps. All these photos of him in scrubs, in lecture halls, they're recycled. Posted and reposted with different captions. But where's he actually been? What's he doing with all the money? Let me try something. Yara opened Facebook and searched for Bowen Wallace, Mason's supposed roommate. Found him. Oh no. I leaned over. Bowen's profile showed him partying at clubs across Europe, and there, in photo after photo, was Mason. No scrubs, no textbooks, just designer clothes, expensive cars, and endless parties. There's more, Yara said, clicking through to Bowen's business page. He runs some kind of document services company, specializing in student visas and academic credentials. My phone buzzed. Dad, can we talk? Alone? I showed Yara the message. She squeezed my hand. He knows something. Yeah, I stood up, gathering my evidence. Time to see just how deep the family denial goes. I met Dad at our old neighborhood park. He sat on a bench, looking older than I'd ever seen him. London, he started, not meeting my eyes. About dinner last night. Did you know? I cut him off. About Mason? He stared at his hands. I had suspicions. The stories didn't always add up, but your mother was so proud, so sure. He stole my identity, Dad, used my name to commit fraud, and you let him? I didn't know about that part. His voice cracked. I couldn't bear to look too closely, to risk destroying what your mother believed in. What about what I believed in? What about protecting me? Dad reached for my arm, but I stepped back. The graduation party's in 3 weeks, I said coldly. Maybe you should start preparing Mom for a different kind of celebration. As I walked away, my phone lit up with another credit alert. A new charge from Barcelona, first-class plane tickets to London. Mason was coming home. Perfect. Let him come. Let him stand in front of everyone and play the role of successful son one last time. I had 3 weeks to build an airtight case, and this accountant was about to show her family exactly what happens when you push the disappointing daughter too far. I texted Yara, "Get ready. This audit's about to go nuclear." Her response came instantly. "Finally, time to make the golden boy tarnish." "Look at this," Yara said, turning her laptop toward me. "Mason's Venmo transactions. Public. All of them." We'd converted her home office into what we called the truth room, walls covered with printouts and sticky notes connecting the dots of Mason's deception. "Jesus," I muttered, scrolling through the payments. $5,000 to Bowen for document processing, $2,000 to someone named Jake for transcript services, and what's this pattern of $100 payments to Harley? Harley? Your work friend Harley? I nodded, feeling my stomach drop. The payments were regular, monthly, starting right around the time I'd first mentioned my suspicions about Mason at work. He's been paying her to spy on me. My phone rang. Speaking of the devil, Harley's name flashed on the screen. I hit ignore. "Your brother's not just a fraud," Yara said, pulling up more records. "He's running a whole operation. Look at his LinkedIn. He's got 3 different profiles under variations of his name, each claiming different credentials. Send me everything." I opened my laptop, logging into my old Gmail account to archive the evidence. That's when I saw it. An email Mason had forwarded to himself years ago. Subject line, "London's important documents." My hands trembled as I opened it. There it was, a scan of my social security card, birth certificate, and driver's license. I'd sent it to myself during a job application and never deleted it. "Found your starting point," Yara said grimly. "What's the plan now?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Mason's flying in next week for a suit fitting. Isn't it wonderful? He's bringing his friend Bowen." "Perfect timing," I said, showing Yara the message. "Think it's time we had a chat with Bowen?" We tracked him down at the Marriott downtown. Mason's Instagram story had tagged him there, bragging about pre-graduation celebrations. The hotel bar was dimly lit, all leather and mahogany. Bowen sat alone, nursing what looked like an expensive whiskey. He was exactly as his photos suggested. Expensive watch, carefully styled hair, smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Bowen?" I slid onto the bar stool next to him. "I'm London, Mason's sister." He choked slightly on his drink. "London? The real London?" "The one and only. Mind explaining why my brother used my identity to enroll in a medical school he never attended?" Bowen's facade cracked. He glanced at the exit, but Yara was already blocking his path. "Look," he said, lowering his voice. "It wasn't personal. Mason needed credentials. I provided a service. I didn't know he was using his sister's identity. But you knew he was lying to his family? Taking their money?" "Mason's life, Mason's choices." Bowen shrugged, but his hands were shaking. "I just handle the paperwork." "Fraud," I corrected. "You handle fraud and identity theft. Wonder what the police would think about your document services business?" His face went pale. "You wouldn't. Try me." I pulled out my phone, showing him the screenshots of his transactions. "Start talking." The story spilled out. Mason had been expelled from his original medical school in the States for cheating. Desperate to keep the money flowing from our parents, he'd connected with Bowen online. They'd created a fake academic career using my stolen identity, forged documents, and carefully crafted social media posts. He said you'd never check, Bowen admitted. Said you were too busy being the family failure to notice. Something snapped inside me. I grabbed his whiskey and dumped it over his expensive shirt. Tell Mason I said hi. I smiled sweetly. And if either of you tries to warn him I'm onto this, I've got a lovely file ready for the fraud department. Back in my car, Yara let out a low whistle. That was badass. What now? Now? I pulled up my email, finding the graduation party invitation Mom had sent. Now we RSVP yes to the party of the century. But first, I dialed Dad's number. He answered on the first ring. London? Is everything okay? No, Dad, it's not. Meet me at Denny's in 20 minutes. Bring your reading glasses. You're going to want to see these documents clearly. I don't know if 20 minutes, Dad, or I start sending evidence to Mom's email instead. I hung up, catching Yara's concerned look. You sure about this? She asked. Once you start, there's no going back. I thought about years of being compared, dismissed, and devalued. About the credit cards maxed out in my name. About Mom's constant praise of her precious son while I worked overtime just to stay afloat. They wanted a doctor in the family so badly, I said, starting the car. Let's see how they handle a forensic accountant instead. Dad stared at the stack of papers I'd laid out on the sticky Denny's table, his coffee growing cold and forgotten. 7 credit cards, I said, pointing to the credit report. 3 personal loans, 2 car leases, all in my name, all traced back to Spain. Want to guess who's been making the minimum payments from an overseas account? He rubbed his temples. London, and here's the best part. I slid over the university documents. Remember that $40,000 you transferred last semester for his clinical rotations? Guess where it actually went? Please, he whispered. Your mother can't handle this kind of shock. Handle it? I laughed bitterly. Like I'm supposed to handle the $100,000 of fraudulent debt in my name? The waitress appeared with more coffee. Dad waited until she left before speaking. What do you want me to do? I want you to stop enabling him, stop pretending. And when I expose everything at his party, I want you to sit there and let the truth come out. He nodded slowly, defeated. As he gathered his coat to leave, he paused. Your mother, she wanted a doctor so badly. After losing your uncle to that misdiagnosis, it became her obsession, making sure no other family would suffer like that. So she sacrificed one child to create a fake version of another? I stood up. Great parenting, Dad. Really stellar work. Back at my apartment, I found Harley sitting on my doorstep. We need to talk, she said, standing quickly. Her mascara was smeared, hands fidgeting with her phone. About what? The monthly payments my brother's been making to you? She flinched. I can explain. Inside, I unlocked the door. You've got 5 minutes. Holly paced my living room while I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. He contacted me 6 months ago, she started. Said he was worried about you, that you seemed unstable, obsessed with undermining his success. And the money? He called it a friendship maintenance fee, said he'd pay me to keep an eye on you, report back if you started asking questions. I pulled up her Venmo history on my phone. $100 a month to spy on your friend. Real nice, Harley. I needed the money. She wiped at fresh tears. My mom's medical bills. Mason said he'd help, said once he was practicing medicine. He's not a doctor. I threw my phone onto the couch. He's never been a doctor. He's a fraud who's been stealing my identity and lying to everyone. Harley went pale. What? Check your messages. I just sent you proof. Every document, every transaction, every lie. I opened my front door. Now get out. London, please. Out! After she left, I sank onto my couch, exhaustion hitting hard. My phone buzzed with a text from Yara. Mom's going crazy with party prep. Aunt Veronica's helping. They're calling it the celebration of the decade. I smiled grimly. opening my laptop to continue building my presentation. They wanted a celebration? I'd give them one they'd never forget. Another text came through, unknown number. I opened it and felt my blood freeze. Back off, little sister. You're not the only one with documents. Remember that DUI charge that mysteriously disappeared from your record 3 years ago? Would be a shame if the medical board found out about that while investigating your fraud claims. My hands shook as I called Yara. He's bluffing, she said after I read her the text. The statute of limitations. It's not about legal consequences, I cut in. It's about Mom. She'd never forgive a DUI. It would prove everything she's ever said about me being the screw-up. So what? You're going to let him win? I stared at the evidence spread across my coffee table. Years of theft, lies, and manipulation, reduced to paper trails and bank statements. No, I said finally. I'm going to beat him at his own game. What's the play? I pulled up the graduation party invitation, focusing on the line about the video tribute Mom was planning. They want a presentation celebrating Mason's journey? I smiled darkly. Let's give them one. With some bonus footage they weren't expecting. You're going to hijack the tribute video? Better. I opened my email, composing a message to Bowen. I'm going to let Mason hang himself. One last grand performance before the curtain falls. And the DUI threat? I thought about Mom's face when she praised Mason, about Dad's quiet complicity, about years of being the family shame. Can't shame someone who's already owned their mistakes, I said. Unlike our golden boy, I actually learned from mine. My phone buzzed again, Mom requesting my contribution for the champagne fountain. Perfect. Let them drink up. They'd need it for what was coming. Perfect! Mom clapped her hands as the hotel staff positioned another flower arrangement. The roses match Mason's medical school colors exactly. I bit back a laugh, focusing on my laptop where I sat in the corner of the ballroom. 1 week until the party, and Mom had dragged me along for the final preparations. London, honey, are you working on the tribute video like I asked? Almost done, Mom. I smiled sweetly. Just adding some special touches. Aunt Veronica bustled over, iPad in hand. The RSVP list is incredible. 3 hospital directors, 2 department heads. She peered at my screen. Oh, is that the video? Show me. I angled the laptop away. It's a surprise. You know, for the big day. Speaking of surprises, Mom said, Mason just texted. He's landing tomorrow. We're having a small family dinner to welcome him home. My stomach clenched. Sorry, can't make it. Work deadline. London, Mom's voice sharpened. Your brother has been studying medicine in Europe for years. The least you can do is... Virginia! Dad's voice cut through the ballroom. He stood in the doorway, face ashen. We need to talk. Now. I watched them hurry into the hallway, Dad clutching what looked suspiciously like the documents I'd shown him at Denny's. Aunt Veronica sidled closer. Trouble in paradise? No idea. I saved my video file and closed the laptop. But I'm sure Mason will make everything better. He always does. My phone buzzed. A text from Yara. Mason's at my coffee shop with Harley. I grabbed my things. Sorry, emergency at work. See you next week. I made it to the coffee shop in record time. Through the window, I could see them. Mason in his expensive suit, Harley looking nervous as she talked. What's the plan? Yara appeared beside me, holding 2 coffees. We watch and record. Through the glass, we could see Harley sliding something across the table. Papers? Mason checked them, then pulled out his wallet. Got it, Yara whispered, her phone capturing everything. Cash payment in exchange for documents. Very subtle, bro. My phone rang. Mom. I declined the call, but her text came through immediately. Your father is being ridiculous. Come home now. Family meeting. Go, Yara said. I'll keep surveillance here. I found them in the living room. Mom pacing, Dad slumped in his chair, a familiar stack of papers on the coffee table. Finally, Mom grabbed my arm. Tell your father he's being paranoid. These accusations about Mason are absurd. They're not accusations, I said quietly. They're facts, bank statements, legal documents, proof. Proof of what? Mason's voice came from the doorway. He stood there in his perfect suit, perfect smile, looking exactly like the successful doctor everyone believed him to be. Mom rushed to hug him. Mason, thank God you're here. Your father and sister are telling ridiculous stories. About what? He met my eyes over Mom's shoulder. About my credentials? Or about the money? About all of it, I said. Game over, Mason. He laughed, pulling out his phone. Speaking of games, sis, remember that night 3 years ago when you called me crying about hitting that parked car? The owner wanted to press charges for drunk driving but mysteriously decided not to? Mom went still. What is he talking about? Yeah, London. Mason's smile turned cruel. What am I talking about? I took a deep breath. I made a mistake, one I regret, but at least I didn't build my entire life on fraud and theft. London, Mom gasped. Let her talk, Dad said suddenly. For once in our lives, let's hear what London has to say. Mason's phone buzzed. He checked it, his smile faltering slightly. Problem? I asked innocently. Maybe Bowen warning you that the police are asking questions about your document services business? You're bluffing. Am I? I pulled out my own phone, showing him the video Yara had just sent, him paying off Harley in the coffee shop. Seems I learned something from you after all, big brother. Always keep receipts. Mom started to speak, but Mason cut her off. The party's in a week. You really want to do this? Destroy the family's reputation? The family's reputation? I laughed. You mean your reputation, your lies, your fraud. London? He said softly, dangerously. Last chance. Back off, or everyone learns exactly what kind of daughter they raised. I walked to the door, pausing to look back at my family. Mom's confusion, Dad's resignation, Mason's barely concealed panic. See you at the party, brother dear. I've put together quite a tribute. You might even say it's life-changing. The Grand Plaza Hotel ballroom sparkled with crystal and candlelight. A string quartet played softly in the corner while waiters circulated with champagne. The projector screen loomed large at the front of the room, waiting. You sure about this? Yara whispered, adjusting my simple black dress. Once you push play... I'm sure. I checked my phone. Everything was queued up and ready. Where's Mason? Making his grand entrance in 10 minutes. Your mom's got it choreographed like a royal wedding. I scanned the room. Dad sat alone at a corner table, nursing what looked like scotch. Aunt Veronica fluttered between guests, pointing out the expensive decorations. Harley huddled near the bar, jumping every time someone approached her. London! Mom's voice cut through the crowd. The video tribute needs to be ready before Mason arrives. Did you finish it? I patted my laptop bag. All set, Mom. Just like you wanted. A perfect celebration of Mason's journey. She beamed, pulling me into a tight hug that smelled of expensive perfume and desperation. I knew you'd come around, finally supporting your brother like you should. Oh, I'm supporting exactly what he deserves. Before she could respond, the string quartet switched to a dramatic flourish. The grand doors swung open. Mason stood there in a tailored tuxedo, Bowen at his side. The crowd burst into applause as he made his way through the room, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. Dr. Garcia, someone called out. You must be so proud. I caught Bowen's flinch at the title. He knew what was coming. Mason reached the front of the room, tapping his glass for attention. Thank you all for coming tonight. Family, friends, distinguished colleagues. My finger hovered over the laptop's enter key. As I stand here, about to begin my medical career, I think about the journey that brought me here, the sacrifices my family made. Dad stood abruptly, his chair scraping loud against the floor. Mason faltered for a moment but continued. The unwavering support of my mother, the generosity of my father. Yara squeezed my hand. Now? Not yet. Wait for it. And yes, even my sister London, who... Mason's eyes found mine across the room. Who has always been there, in her own way. Now, I whispered, and pressed enter. The lights dimmed. The projector hummed to life. Mom clasped her hands excitedly as the first slides appeared. Childhood photos, graduation pictures, carefully staged shots of Mason in scrubs. Then the screen went black. Technical difficulties? Aunt Veronica called out. The next slide appeared, Mason's official expulsion letter from his first medical school. Then another, screenshots of his transactions with Bowen, credit card statements in my name, bank transfers, Venmo payments for fake documents. The room went silent. What is this? Mom's voice shook. London, what are you doing? The final slide appeared. A police report filed yesterday, detailing identity theft and fraud charges against Mason Garcia and Bowen Wallace. Mason lunged for the projector. This is ridiculous. A jealous sister's attempt to... To what? I stood, my voice carrying across the stunned room. To expose the truth? That you never finished medical school? That you've been living off stolen money and forged documents? Security! Mom screamed. Remove her! Actually, a voice called from the back, we're here for someone else. 2 police officers stepped forward, moving toward Mason and Bowen. No, Mom whispered. No, this isn't happening. Mason looked around wildly, then bolted for the side door. He made it 3 steps before an officer caught him. Mason Garcia, you're under arrest for identity theft, wire fraud, and financial crimes. The room erupted into chaos. Guests fled for the exits. Mom collapsed into a chair, while Aunt Veronica frantically dialed her phone. Dad just stood there, watching as his son was handcuffed. London, Mason called as they led him past me. You'll regret this. Family is supposed to protect each other. Funny, I replied. I don't remember you protecting me when you stole my identity, or when you paid my friends to spy on me, or when you threatened to expose my DUI to destroy my career. A DUI? Mom's head snapped up. Yes, Mom. 3 years ago. I made a mistake, took responsibility, and learned from it, unlike your perfect son. As Mason disappeared through the doors, Yara appeared with my coat. Show's over, she said softly. Let's go. I looked at my shattered family one last time. Mom's mascara-streaked face, Dad's empty eyes, Aunt Veronica's frantic damage control. The truth hurts, I said to no one in particular, but lies destroy. The champagne fountain burbled quietly in the corner, celebrating nothing. The morning after the party, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Local news had picked up the story. Fake doctor's graduation party ends in arrest. I ignored the calls and drove to my parents' house. Mom sat in her dark living room, still wearing her party dress from last night. Empty wine bottles littered the coffee table. How could you? Her voice was raw. Your own brother. How could I? I stepped into the room. How could you let him steal my identity, drain our family's savings, live a lie for years? He was going to pay it all back. She hurled a wine glass at the wall. It shattered, leaving a red stain like a wound. Once he was established, successful. He was never going to be a doctor, Mom. He failed out years ago. Everything since then has been fraud. Virginia. Dad appeared in the doorway, looking like he hadn't slept. She's right. I found more documents this morning. Bank statements, loan applications. Mason's been running this scheme since college. Mom's face crumpled. No, you're both wrong. My son wouldn't. Your son did. I pulled out my phone, showing her the police report. And now he's facing federal charges, along with Bowen and everyone else involved in their little document fraud ring, including your friend Harley, Dad added quietly. She confessed everything to the police this morning. A harsh laugh escaped Mom's throat. At least Harley was loyal to someone in this family. Loyal? I stepped closer. She took bribes to spy on me. Just like Mason took your money to fund his parties. Just like you took my future to feed his lies. I gave him everything, Mom whispered. Exactly. Everything, including me. The doorbell rang. Dad opened it to find Aunt Veronica clutching newspapers. It's everywhere, she announced, spreading them across the table. Social media, too. Everyone's talking about the fake doctor scandal. Mom grabbed the nearest paper, then froze. The headline screamed, "Mother claims ignorance in medical school fraud case." What? She scanned the article. Who talked to the press? I did. Dad's voice was firm. This morning. They needed to know you were a victim too, Virginia. That Mason fooled us all. Fooled us? Mom stood shakily. No, I knew something wasn't right. The stories that didn't match, the endless requests for money. I knew, but I couldn't. I couldn't let go of the dream. The room went silent. Even Aunt Veronica stopped her nervous fidgeting. You knew, I whispered. All this time? I wanted it so badly. Mom sank back down. A doctor in the family. Someone to prevent what happened to your uncle. I thought if I believed hard enough, supported him enough, you could force it to be true? I laughed bitterly. While destroying your actual children in the process? Children? She looked up sharply. You were fine. You had your little accounting job, your practical life. I was drowning in debt he created, working overtime to pay off cards he opened in my name, watching you praise him while treating me like a disappointment. Virginia, Dad cut in. Stop. Just stop. Mom's phone buzzed. Mason's lawyer, requesting bail money. She stared at it, then slowly set it face down. I can't fix this, can I? She whispered. No, I said, you can't. Aunt Veronica cleared her throat. The country club is suggesting we cancel our membership, temporarily, until this blows over. Mom buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook with sobs. I'm moving out, Dad announced suddenly. Taking some time at my brother's place. I need space to think. Abraham, please. Mom reached for him, but he stepped back. We all need space, I said, gathering my things, to figure out who we are without Mason's lies holding us together. London, Mom called as I reached the door. The DUI, why didn't you tell us? I turned back one last time. Because I knew you'd never forgive my mistake while excusing all of his. Funny how that worked out, isn't it? Outside, Yara waited in her car. How'd it go? About as well as detonating a nuclear bomb in the middle of a family could go. I buckled my seatbelt. Dad's leaving. Mom's breaking. Mason's lawyer is already working on bail. And you? I thought about the weight I'd carried for years. The debt, the lies, the constant comparison to a brother who never really existed. I'm free, I said simply. For the first time in my life, I'm actually free. Where to now? I pulled out my phone, deleting the dozens of missed calls from relatives and reporters. Anywhere but here. The truth's out. The golden boy's crown is broken. Time to let the pieces fall where they may. The courthouse corridor felt too bright, too sterile. I smoothed my blazer, watching Mason being led in, wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of his usual designer suits. Ready? Yara squeezed my shoulder. Born ready. Inside, the judge shuffled papers while Mason's lawyer made final arguments. Mom sat in the back row, alone. Dad hadn't returned her calls since moving out. Aunt Veronica had mysteriously developed a sudden need to vacation in Florida. Before sentencing, the judge said, would the victim like to make a statement? I stood, my heels clicking against the floor as I approached the podium. Mason wouldn't meet my eyes. Your Honor, my brother stole more than just my identity. He stole years of trust, family relationships, and financial security. Oh, spare us the dramatics, Mason interrupted. We all know this was just jealousy. The judge banged his gavel. Mr. Garcia, control yourself or I'll have you removed. I continued, stronger now. My brother created an elaborate fantasy of success, funded by fraud and enabled by our family's willful blindness. He didn't just steal money, he stole our ability to see truth, to trust each other, to be honest about who we really are. Mom made a small sound in the back of the courtroom. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for accountability, for recognition that no amount of family loyalty should excuse criminal behavior, that no parent's dreams should cost their children their futures. The judge nodded. Thank you, Miss Garcia. Please be seated. The sentence came down hard. 5 years for fraud, identity theft, and running a document forgery ring. Bowen got 3 years. Harley took a plea deal for testimony. As they led Mason away, Mom rushed forward. Wait, please just let me... Mason turned, and for a moment I saw something real in his eyes. Fear, maybe even regret. Mom, he said softly, I'm sorry. Not for what I did, but for failing to become what you needed me to be. The guards continued moving. Mom stood frozen until a court officer gently guided her away. Outside, reporters swarmed us. I pushed through them to find Dad waiting by his car. You did good in there, he said, hugging me awkwardly. Want to grab coffee? The diner was quiet, just us and a few truckers. Dad stirred his coffee endlessly. I sold the house, he said finally. Your mother's moving in with her sister temporarily. I'm keeping my apartment. Dad, you don't have to. Yes, I do. We all do. He looked up. We need to rebuild, separately, figure out who we are without the lies. My phone buzzed, a text from my bank. The first restitution payment from Mason's seized assets had been deposited. I started a support group, I said, for victims of familial identity theft. You'd be surprised how common it is. Dad smiled slightly. Always the practical one, even now. Someone had to be. We sat in comfortable silence until Dad pulled out an envelope. Found this in the house cleanup. Your 5th grade report card. Straight A's in math. I should have seen it then. You were the real prodigy, just in a different field. I took the worn paper, remembering how proud I'd been, how Mom had barely glanced at it before rushing to Mason's soccer game. I'm not angry anymore, I realized suddenly. I'm just done with the comparisons, the expectations, the family mythology. Good. Dad reached across the table, squeezing my hand. That's good. My phone buzzed again, Yara sending a link to my blog about family fraud. The comments section was filled with similar stories, people finding strength to confront their own golden children and enabler parents. You know what's funny? I said, showing Dad the comments. By exposing Mason's lies, I finally became what Mom always wanted, someone who helps other families avoid tragedy. Just not in the way she imagined. No, I smiled. Better, because it's real. Outside, the sun was setting. Dad hugged me goodbye, promising to come to dinner next week. As I walked to my car, I saw Mom across the street, watching. She raised her hand in a small wave, then turned and walked away. I didn't wave back. Some distances need to stay uncrossed, some breaks need to stay broken. Not out of anger or revenge, but because sometimes healing means accepting that not everything can or should be fixed. My phone lit up with another comment notification. Thank you for sharing your story. It gave me courage to face my own family's lies. I smiled, starting my car. The truth hadn't given me the perfect family I dreamed of as a child. It had given me something better, freedom to be imperfectly, authentically myself. And that was worth more than all of Mason's fake degrees combined.
The first thing I noticed when I walked into my daughter Emily's room was the silence. No music playing, no typing at her desk, none of the usual sounds of a busy 17-year-old preparing college applications. Just silence and the sight of my daughter curled up on her bed, shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. "Emily?" I said softly, my heart dropping. "What happened?" She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears, clutching a letter in her trembling hands. They rejected me," she managed between sobs. Stanford said. "They said they had to rescind my early acceptance due to academic dishonesty." My blood ran cold. Academic dishonesty? Emily? The girl who had spent the last 4 years maintaining a perfect GPA while juggling varsity swimming, student government, and countless volunteer hours? "That's impossible," I said, sitting on the edge of her bed. "There must be some mistake." Emily handed me the letter, her hands shaking. "Someone reported that I cheated on my AP chemistry finals. They said they had proof." As I scanned the formal language of the rejection letter, my mind was already racing. Emily had been dreaming of Stanford since she was 12. Her room was decorated in cardinal red and white, Stanford pennants hanging on every wall. She had earned this, really earned it, and now someone was trying to take it away from her. Who would do this? I wondered aloud, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew. The slight smile I'd seen on Grace's face at breakfast this morning suddenly made horrible sense. Grace, my stepdaughter. The girl who had made it her mission to compete with Emily ever since her father and I married 3 years ago. "My name is Catherine Mitchell," and at that moment, watching my daughter's dreams crumble because of what I strongly suspected was her stepsister's jealousy, I felt something inside me shift. The careful peace I maintained in our blended family, always trying to keep everyone happy, suddenly seemed less important than justice. "Mom?" Emily's voice was small, younger somehow. "What am I going to do?" It was everything. I pulled her close, letting her cry into my shoulder while my mind worked furiously. "We're going to fight this," I said firmly. "Whatever it takes." What Emily didn't know, what no one in our family really knew, was that before I became Catherine Mitchell, devoted wife and mother, I had been Catherine Reynolds, investigative journalist. I had spent 15 years uncovering truths that people tried to hide, following paper trails and exposing lies. I had stepped away from that life when I married David, choosing instead to focus on our blended family. But those skills, they never really go away. "I need you to tell me exactly what happened," I said, pulling back to look at Emily. Every detail. Through her tears, Emily explained. The accusation claimed she had cheated on her AP chemistry final last semester, the same class where she had finally pulled ahead of Grace in rankings. Apparently, someone had provided the school with evidence that Emily had accessed test materials beforehand. "But I didn't," she insisted, fresh tears spilling. "I studied for weeks. I did. I did know. I had watched her spend countless nights at her desk, chemical equations spread around her like a complicated puzzle. Emily had earned her A+ honestly, the same A+ that had pushed her class ranking just above Grace's. Grace got her Stanford rejection last week," Emily said quietly, realization dawning in her eyes. She was so angry. "Don't worry about Grace right now," I said, though internally my suspicions were hardening into certainty. "Just tell me everything you remember about the test day." As Emily recounted the details, I made mental notes. The testing room setup, the seating arrangement, the proctor's position. Every detail could be important. What Grace didn't know, what none of them knew, was that she hadn't just messed with my daughter's future. She had awakened something I had kept dormant for years. The relentless pursuit of truth that had once been my life's work. I waited until Emily had cried herself to sleep before making my first move. In my home office, I pulled out a notebook I hadn't touched in years. The reporter's instincts kicked in as I began mapping out what I knew and what I needed to find out. First step, the evidence itself. What exactly had been provided to the school? And more importantly, how had it been obtained? I opened my laptop and typed out a carefully worded email to Stanford's admissions office, requesting copies of all materials related to the academic dishonesty claim. Then I sent another to Emily's high school principal, scheduling an urgent meeting. As I worked, I heard footsteps in the hallway, Grace's distinctive gait. She paused briefly near my office door, probably wondering why the light was still on at midnight. I kept typing, giving no indication that I had noticed her presence. Let her think she had won. Let her believe that her perfect plan had worked. Because what Grace didn't understand was that she had just made a crucial mistake. She had hurt my daughter, yes, but more than that, she had left a trail, and following trails, that was what I did best. The next morning, I maintained my normal routine, made breakfast, packed lunches, smiled at David and Grace as they left for their days. But as soon as they were gone, I began my real work. First stop, Emily's high school. Principal Martinez was waiting for me, looking uncomfortable as I took a seat across from his desk. "Mrs. Mitchell," he began, "I understand you're upset, but the evidence." "Show me," I interrupted calmly. "Show me exactly what evidence was presented to Stanford." He hesitated, then pulled out a file. Inside were screenshots of what appeared to be text messages between Emily and another student discussing test answers. There were also photographs of what looked like test materials on Emily's desk before the exam. I studied them carefully, my old training kicking in. "These are very convenient," I said finally. "Almost too convenient. Tell me, did anyone verify the authenticity of these messages? Check the metadata on the photos." Principal Martinez shifted in his seat. "Well, given the serious nature of the accusation, I'll take that as a no." I closed the file. "I'd like copies of everything, please, and I'll need the name of the student who provided these." I can't reveal that information." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You can, and you will. Because if you don't, the next person sitting in this chair will be my lawyer, asking why the school acted on unverified evidence without due process." 20 minutes later, I walked out with everything I needed, including the confirmation that Grace had been the one to report Emily. Phase 1 complete. Now for the real work to begin. The more I dug into Grace's evidence, the more threads began to unravel. Sitting at my desk late that night, surrounded by printouts and digital forensics reports, I felt a familiar surge of satisfaction. The kind I used to get when a big story was coming together. The text messages Grace had submitted, they were fake, good fakes, but fake nonetheless. My old contact in digital forensics had confirmed it. The metadata didn't match up, and the timestamps had been manipulated. The photos of test materials on Emily's desk, taken weeks after the actual exam, carefully staged to look incriminating. Grace had been thorough, I'd give her that. But she hadn't counted on going up against someone who had spent years exposing frauds far more sophisticated than this. My phone buzzed. A text from David. "Working late again. Don't wait up." I smiled grimly. My husband had no idea what his daughter had done, or what I was doing to fix it. He saw Grace as his perfect little girl, incapable of such calculated cruelty, just like he didn't really know about my past life as an investigative journalist. Our marriage had been built on fresh starts, on leaving the past behind. But some things couldn't be left behind. "Mom?" Emily appeared in my doorway, looking small in her oversized Stanford sweatshirt. "What are you doing up so late?" I quickly minimized the screens on my laptop. "Just some work, honey. How are you holding up?" She shrugged, but I could see the pain in her eyes. "I submitted applications to other schools, safety schools." She practically whispered the last part, like it physically hurt to say it. "Emily," I said carefully, "I need you to trust me. This isn't over." She looked at me skeptically. "Mom, Stanford already made their decision. Grace won." "Did she?" I pulled out a folder. "Come here. I want to show you something." I laid out the evidence of Grace's deception. The forensics report, the timeline inconsistencies, everything I had gathered over the past week. Emily's eyes widened as she took it all in. She really did this? Her voice trembled. "But why? Why would she go to all this trouble?" "Because she couldn't beat you fairly," I said simply, and she underestimated who she was dealing with. Emily looked up at me, really looked at me, like she was seeing something new. "Mom, how did you figure all this out?" I took a deep breath. It was time for some truth. Before I married your stepdad, before I became just Mom, I was an investigative journalist. I specialized in exposing frauds and cover-ups. I smiled at her shocked expression. Let's just say Grace picked the wrong person to try to deceive. Just then, we heard the front door open. David and Grace returning from their late dinner. Emily quickly helped me gather the papers, understanding instinctively that this needed to stay between us for now. "Trust me," I whispered as she headed back to her room. She nodded, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. The next morning, Grace was her usual sweet self at breakfast. playing the concerned stepsister perfectly. Emily, I heard back from UCLA yesterday. Their psychology program is really good too, you know. I watched Emily's hands clench under the table but admired her composure as she forced a smile. Thanks, Grace. I'll keep that in mind. David beamed at Grace. Always looking out for others, aren't you, sweetheart? I took a slow sip of coffee, remembering the latest piece of evidence I had uncovered last night. Grace's secret email account, the one she used to submit the false claims to Stanford. She'd been clever, using a VPN to hide her tracks, but not quite clever enough. After they left for school, I made my move. First stop, Stanford's Office of Academic Integrity. I had an appointment with the dean, and this time, I was armed with more than just maternal indignation. Dean Harrison was a stern-looking woman with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes. She didn't look like someone easily swayed by emotion. Perfect. Mrs. Mitchell, she began, while I understand your distress. I cut her off by placing a thick folder on her desk. With respect, Dean Harrison, you don't understand anything yet, but you're about to. For the next hour, I laid out the evidence. The forensic analysis proving the text messages were fabricated. The metadata showing the photos were taken after the exam. The email trail linking everything back to Grace's secret account. This, I concluded, is not just about my daughter's college acceptance. This is about a deliberate attempt to destroy someone's academic future through fraudulent means. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Dean Harrison was silent for a long moment, reviewing the documents with growing concern. Finally, she looked up at me. This is quite comprehensive, Mrs. Mitchell. May I ask how you obtained all this? Let's just say I have experience in uncovering the truth. I met her gaze steadily. The question is, does Stanford have the integrity to admit they acted on false information? She nodded slowly. We'll need to verify everything independently, of course. But if this all checks out, she trailed off, then straightened in her chair. We may need to reconsider our decision regarding your daughter's admission. As I left her office, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Phase 2 was complete, but the hardest part was still to come. Because Grace, she still thought she had won. She had no idea that her carefully constructed plan was about to come crashing down around her. And I had decided that the revelation would happen in the most public way possible, at her high school graduation, where she was scheduled to give a speech as salutatorian. Right after Emily would speak as valedictorian. That is, if everything went according to my plan. Graduation day dawned bright and clear. I sat in the school auditorium between David and Grace's mother Janet, who had flown in for the occasion. The proud parents watching their children graduate. If they only knew what was coming. Grace was practically glowing in her white graduation robe, chatting with friends near the stage. Emily sat quietly in her valedictorian's chair, her face composed but her hands fidgeting with the envelope containing her speech. What neither of them knew was that I had a third envelope tucked safely in my purse. Can you believe both our girls did so well? Janet whispered to me. Grace was so disappointed about Stanford, but she's handled it with such grace. UCLA will be lucky to have her. I smiled politely, thinking about the email I'd received from Stanford yesterday confirming everything was in place. Yes, they've both handled everything, exactly as expected. The ceremony began with the usual speeches, the principal, the school board president, various dignitaries. Finally, it was time for the student speeches. Emily stood first, walking to the podium with quiet confidence. Her voice was clear and strong as she began. When I was little, my mom taught me that truth always finds its way to the light, that no matter how deep someone tries to bury it, the truth has a way of surfacing when it matters most. My heart swelled with pride. We had worked on this speech together, carefully crafting each word. This year, I learned that lesson firsthand. I learned that sometimes people will try to take what's yours, will try to dim your light to make theirs shine brighter. But I also learned that if you stay true to yourself, if you keep working and believing in what's right, justice has a way of prevailing. I saw Grace shift uncomfortably in her seat. Emily continued, her voice growing stronger. So today, as we prepare to leave these halls and start our new journeys, I want to share something with all of you. Something that proves that truth and justice aren't just words and inspirational quotes. They're real and they matter. This was my cue. I stood up, drawing confused looks from David and Janet. 2 months ago, Emily said, My acceptance to Stanford was rescinded because someone provided false evidence claiming I had cheated. Today, I'm honored to announce that not only has that decision been reversed, but Stanford has offered me a full academic scholarship. The auditorium erupted in applause. Grace's face had gone pale. But wait, Emily held up her hand. There's more to this story. Mom. I walked to the stage, my heels clicking against the wooden floor in the sudden silence. Principal Martinez, who had been briefed about what was coming, nodded slightly. Good morning, I said, taking the podium. My name is Catherine Mitchell, and before I was a mother, I was an investigative journalist specializing in exposing fraud. Today, I'm here to share some evidence that recently came to light. I opened my envelope and began laying out the truth, the fabricated texts, the staged photos, the secret email account. With each revelation, Grace sank lower in her seat. The person who orchestrated this campaign to destroy my daughter's future, I continued, my voice steady, is sitting on this stage right now. The audience gasped. David stood up, his face a mask of confusion and growing horror. Grace, I said, turning to face my stepdaughter directly, would you like to explain why you did it? Grace looked wildly around like a cornered animal. I don't know what you're talking about. You can't prove. Actually, I interrupted, pulling out the final piece of evidence, a printout of emails from her secret account. I can. And I did. What followed was chaos. Grace burst into tears. David demanded explanations. Janet looked like she might faint. But through it all, Emily stood tall, finally vindicated. Principal Martinez took the microphone, his voice cutting through the uproar. In light of this evidence, which has been thoroughly verified, the school board has made some adjustments to today's proceedings. Grace Mitchell, please step down from the stage. Your diploma will be held pending a review of your academic record. As Grace fled the stage, I returned to my seat. David turned to me, his face a mix of anger and betrayal. Why did he tell me? Would you have believed me? I asked quietly. Or would you have defended her, like you always do? He had no answer for that. The ceremony continued, though in a somewhat subdued fashion. Emily gave the rest of her speech, speaking about integrity and second chances. She was gracious, never mentioning Grace by name again. Afterward, as we stood in the parking lot taking pictures, Stanford's formal reinstatement letter safely tucked in Emily's graduation cap, David approached me. I don't know what to say, he began. I had no idea Grace could do something like this. I know, I said simply. That's part of the problem. He nodded slowly. What happens now? Now we deal with the consequences. All of us. I looked at him steadily. Grace needs help, David. Real help. Not excuses or protection. Later that night, as Emily and I sat in our backyard looking at the stars, she asked me the question I'd been expecting. Mom, did you have to do it so publicly? Expose Grace like that? I thought carefully before answering. Sometimes, sweetheart, justice needs witnesses. What Grace did wasn't just about hurting you. It was about making everyone believe a lie. The truth needed the same audience. She nodded, understanding. Will things ever be the same with David? No, I said honestly. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Sometimes relationships need to be rebuilt on truth instead of comfortable lies. 3 months later, Emily moved into her dorm at Stanford. Her room was exactly as she dreamed it would be, decorated in cardinal red and white. Grace had started therapy, finally confronting the jealousy and insecurity that had driven her actions. David and I were in counseling, working to rebuild our marriage on a foundation of honesty. As for me, I discovered that my old investigative skills hadn't faded. They'd just been waiting for the right moment to resurface. I'd started taking on some freelance work, exposing truths that needed to be told. Sometimes the biggest stories aren't about international conspiracies or corporate fraud. Sometimes they're about the quiet battles fought in suburban homes where truth and justice matter just as much as they do anywhere else. And sometimes the most important investigations are the ones that protect not just the truth, but the people we love most. The dinner party was in full swing, crystal glasses clinking as Seattle's elite mingled in my former mother-in-law's mansion. I shouldn't have been there. Technically, I wasn't even invited. But when your company caters the most exclusive events in the city, you sometimes end up in interesting situations. Olivia, darling. Margaret Wellington's voice cut through the crowd. You simply must try these divine crab cakes. They're from Milano's, of course. Not like that dreadful catering service my ex-daughter-in-law runs. I kept my focus on arranging the dessert display, fighting back a smile. If Margaret only knew that both the dreadful catering service and her precious Milano's were owned by the same person. Me. My name is Sophia Chen, and 3 years ago, I committed the unforgivable sin of divorcing Margaret's precious son, William. Not because of any scandal or drama, but simply because we'd grown apart. I wanted to build something of my own. He wanted a wife who'd be content hosting charity luncheons and looking pretty at board meetings. What the Wellingtons never knew was that I'd been building my empire long before the divorce. The catering company was just the visible part, my testing ground for new recipes and concepts. Behind the scenes, I'd been quietly acquiring and transforming struggling restaurants across the city. Milano's had been my first major acquisition. I kept the name but completely revamped the menu and operations, turning a failing Italian restaurant into the hottest chain in the Pacific Northwest. Not that anyone knew I owned it. All the paperwork was under my holding company's name. Sophia, Jenny, my assistant, appeared at my elbow. The kitchen needs you. There's an issue with the soufflés. I nodded, grateful for the excuse to step away from Margaret's voice. In the kitchen, my team worked with practiced efficiency, but I could see the tension in their shoulders. They'd all heard Margaret's comments throughout the night. Listen up, I said, gathering them around. I know this isn't easy, but remember, we're not just here to serve food. We're here to prove a point. Maria, my head chef, raised an eyebrow. Are you finally going to tell her? Not yet. I adjusted my chef's coat, but soon, very soon. The truth was, I'd been planning this moment for months. Margaret's campaign to blacklist my catering company from Seattle's social circle had actually done me a favor. It had pushed me to expand faster, think bigger. While she was busy badmouthing my little business, I'd been building a restaurant empire worth over $50 million. My phone buzzed. A text from William. Saw you in the kitchen. We should talk. I ignored it. William had been trying to talk ever since he found out I'd bought his favorite steakhouse last month. Not that he knew I owned it. He just wanted to complain about the menu changes. Mrs. Wellington is asking for more of the Milano's signature sauce, Jenny reported, returning from the dining room. She's telling everyone it's a secret family recipe that no other restaurant could possibly replicate. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. That sauce was my grandmother's recipe, the same one Margaret had once called too ethnic for her dinner parties. Through the kitchen doors, I could hear her holding court. Really, it's about standards. Some people, she shot a pointed look toward the kitchen, simply don't understand the level of excellence required in our circle. That's why I only trust Milano's for my important events. I checked my watch. In exactly 2 weeks, Margaret would be hosting the annual Wellington Family Foundation Gala, the biggest social event of the season. She'd been bragging about having Milano's cater it for months. What she didn't know was that I had a surprise planned for that night, one that would finally show her exactly who she'd been underestimating all these years. Sophia, Jenny appeared again. The lawyer called. Everything's set for next week's board meeting. I nodded. The pieces were falling into place. Perfect. And the documents I asked for? All here. She handed me a thick folder. Are you sure about this timing? Absolutely. I started reviewing the papers. Margaret Wellington has spent 3 years trying to destroy my reputation in this city. It's time she learned who really runs things around here. The week before the Wellington Gala was a blur of meetings and preparations. I sat in my downtown office, reviewing the final documents for what I was about to do. The view of Puget Sound stretched out before me, gray waves matching my contemplative mood. The board meeting for Milano's is confirmed for tomorrow, Jenny said, setting a coffee on my desk. Margaret Wellington still thinks it's just a routine quarterly review. I smiled, picking up the latest financial reports. Under my ownership, Milano's had grown from 3 struggling locations to 15 thriving restaurants across the Pacific Northwest. And now I was about to merge it with my other holdings, creating one of the largest restaurant groups in the region. My phone buzzed. William again. Mother's frantic about the gala menu. She says no one at Milano's is returning her calls. What's going on, Sophia? I ignored it, just like I'd ignored his last dozen messages. Let him worry. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Chen, Your 2 o'clock is here. The Milano's executive team. Send them in. 6 people filed into my office, all looking nervous. They'd been running Milano's day-to-day operations while I remained the silent owner. Only they knew who really signed their paychecks. As you know, I began tomorrow's board meeting will announce some significant changes. I want to make sure we're all clear on how this will play out. I laid out the plan, watching their faces as they realized what was about to happen. The merger would make headlines, especially given who would be affected. Mrs. Wellington, my CFO, said carefully, "She'll be there tomorrow?" "Oh yes." I leaned back in my chair. "As a special guest. After all, she's our most vocal supporter." Later that evening, as I was leaving the office, I ran into exactly the person I'd been avoiding. William stood by the elevator, his expensive suit a reminder of the life I'd left behind. "Sophia," he said, stepping forward. "We need to talk." "About what, William?" "How your mother's been trying to destroy my business, or about how you've done nothing to stop her." He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Look, you know how mother gets. But these changes at Milano's, they're causing her real distress. She's planned this gala for months, and it will be perfectly catered," I assured him. "Just maybe not quite the way she expects." His eyes narrowed. "What are you planning?" "You'll find out tomorrow, along with everyone else." The next morning, I dressed carefully in my power suit, Chanel, black, impeccable. Margaret wasn't the only one who knew how to make an impression. The Milano's boardroom was filled by the time I arrived. Margaret sat near the front, radiating self-importance. She'd been invited as a valued customer to provide feedback on recent changes. She didn't even look at me as I walked in. The chairman stood to begin the meeting. "Before we discuss regular business, we have a special announcement. Over the past 3 years, Milano's has undergone significant transformation under new ownership. Today, we're announcing a merger that will create the largest restaurant group in the Pacific Northwest." Margaret perked up, probably already planning how to brag about her connection to such a prestigious company. "I'd like to introduce the owner who has guided this transformation, Ms. Sophia Chen." The silence was absolute as I walked to the podium. Margaret's face went through a fascinating series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally horror. "This is impossible," she sputtered. "She runs a catering company." "Actually," I smiled, "I run several businesses. The catering company, Milano's, and as of today, the new Chen Restaurant Group, which will include 28 locations across 3 states. I clicked to the next slide, showing the combined revenue figures. Margaret's face had gone pale. "Of course," I continued, "this merger means some changes in how we operate. For instance, we'll be reviewing all our regular client relationships, ensuring they align with our company values." Margaret stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. "You planned this? All of it?" "Planned what?" I asked innocently. "To build a successful business. Yes, I did. To watch you praise my restaurants while trying to destroy my catering company, that was just an amusing bonus." The night of the Wellington Gala arrived clear and cold. I stood in the kitchen of the Four Seasons ballroom, watching my team prepare what would be a very special menu. After the board meeting revelation, Margaret had tried desperately to cancel Milano's catering contract for the gala. But ironically, the same ironclad contracts she'd always praised them for now worked against her. Breaking it this late would have meant hefty penalties and, more importantly, social embarrassment. "Everything's ready," Maria announced, putting the finishing touches on the appetizers. "Should we serve them exactly as planned?" I smiled, adjusting my chef's coat. Tonight, instead of hiding in the kitchen, I would be front and center. Exactly as planned. Let's show Seattle what we can really do. The ballroom was filled with the city's elite, all drawn by the Wellington family name. Margaret stood by the entrance, greeting guests with a fixed smile that looked more like a grimace. When she saw me emerge from the kitchen in my pristine chef's coat with Executive Chef, Chen Restaurant Group embroidered in gold, her smile cracked completely. "What are you doing?" she hissed as I approached. "You can't be out here." "Actually, I can. It's in the contract. The executive chef personally oversees all premium events." I gestured to the approaching servers. "Ah, here come the appetizers. I believe you'll recognize them." The servers presented trays of elegantly plated bites, all signature dishes from Milano's, but with subtle twists that elevated them further. "These are Milano's recipes. Margaret protested. You can't. They're my recipes. I corrected her gently. Every dish you've praised at Milano's for the past 3 years. They were all mine. That secret family sauce you love so much? My grandmother's recipe. The color drained from her face as guests began sampling the food, exclaiming over the familiar yet enhanced flavors. Oh, Margaret, one of her society friends called out. These are even better than usual. Did Milano's get a new chef? Before Margaret could respond, I stepped forward. Actually, I'm the chef who's been developing Milano's menu for the past 3 years. Sophia Chen, executive chef and CEO of the Chen Restaurant Group. The woman's eyes widened with recognition. Chen, weren't you? William's wife? Yes. Now I'm just the owner of his favorite restaurants. I turned to Margaret. Would you like me to explain how that spicy crab sauce is made? It's a family recipe after all, just not your family. She opened her mouth to respond but was interrupted by William's arrival. He looked between us, taking in the situation. Sophia, he said carefully, could we talk privately? I considered refusing, but curiosity won out. We stepped into a quiet corner of the ballroom. You've made your point, he said. You've humiliated Mother thoroughly. What more do you want? I laughed softly. You still don't get it, do you? This isn't about humiliation. It's about truth. For 3 years, your mother has tried to destroy my reputation, all while unknowingly praising my work. I'm just finally taking credit for what's mine. The merger announcement has already affected our family's standing. Your family's standing? I interrupted. What about my livelihood? The contracts your mother cost me? The lies she spread? He had the grace to look ashamed. I should have stopped her. Yes, you should have. But you didn't, and now here we are. I gestured to the room where guests were enthusiastically enjoying my food. I've built something remarkable, William, with or without the Wellington name. The evening continued, a masterclass in elegant revenge. Each course revealed another Milano's favorite, each presentation more spectacular than the last. Margaret was forced to watch as guest after guest praised the chef she'd spent years denigrating. The final blow came during dessert, as my team served my signature tiramisu, the same one Margaret had once declared the height of culinary sophistication. I clinked my glass for attention. I want to thank the Wellington Family Foundation for this opportunity, I announced to the room. In honor of tonight's event, the Chen Restaurant Group will be donating all proceeds from this evening to culinary education scholarships for underprivileged youth. The applause was thunderous. Margaret looked like she swallowed something sour. After all, what could be worse than her nemesis receiving a standing ovation at her own gala? Later that night, as the last guest departed, I found William waiting by the kitchen. You know, he said quietly, I always wondered why you chose restaurants over our life together. It wasn't about the restaurants, William. It was about being seen for who I am, not just who I married. I started to walk past him, then paused. Your mother's sauce that you love so much, it's on the menu at my new bistro downtown. Feel free to stop by, if you can handle knowing who really makes it. 6 months later, the Chen Restaurant Group had become the talk of the Pacific Northwest culinary scene. Margaret had quietly stepped back from her social obligations, citing health concerns. My catering company was now the most sought-after service in Seattle. And William? He became a regular at my new bistro, always ordering the sauce he grew up loving. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about forcing them to face the truth they've been denying all along. As for me, I finally had everything I'd worked for. Success, respect, and the satisfaction of knowing that every time Margaret Wellington craved her favorite restaurant's food, she'd have to swallow her pride along with it. Sometimes the sweetest victory isn't in the revenge itself. It's in the quiet moments afterward, when your enemies realize they've been wrong about you all along. The doorbell rang at exactly 2:14 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon. I'd been expecting it, though Ashley Carter, the woman who stood on my doorstep clutching a manila envelope, had no idea that her dramatic revelation was about to backfire spectacularly. Are you Victoria Mitchell? She demanded, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage. I smiled warmly, stepping aside. I am. Would you like to come in? I just made coffee. She hesitated, clearly thrown off by my calm demeanor. This wasn't the reaction she'd expected when coming to confront her husband's other wife. My name is Victoria Mitchell, or at least, that's what James Mitchell had called me for the past 8 years. I'm 34, run a successful consulting firm, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had a perfect marriage to a wealthy investment banker. Then I found the receipt. Please sit. I gestured to our immaculate living room, a showcase of James's success with its designer furniture and original artwork. Ashley perched awkwardly on the edge of the white leather sofa, still clutching her envelope. I don't understand, she said, watching me pour coffee into delicate china cups. You're not surprised. About you being James's wife? The one he married in 2008 in Cape Cod. I handed her a cup. No, I'm not surprised at all. The color drained from her face. How did you know about Cape Cod? I sat down across from her, smoothing my skirt. The same way I know about your daughter Emma's private school tuition, the house in Connecticut, and the fact that James has been lying to both of us for nearly a decade. She set down her untouched coffee with trembling hands. I don't understand. If you knew, why didn't I confront him? Leave him? Report him? I smiled. Because that would have been too easy, and James Mitchell deserves anything but easy. I walked to my home office, returning with my own manila envelope. 6 months ago, I found a receipt in James's jacket. Nothing suspicious, just a dinner at Le Bernardin. But the date caught my eye. It was our anniversary, and James had told me he was in London on business. Ashley's eyes widened as I continued, so I did some digging. Hired a private investigator. And what I found, I laughed softly. Well, let's just say James isn't as clever as he thinks he is. Why are you telling me this? Ashley asked, her initial anger giving way to confusion. Because, I said, opening my envelope, you're not here by accident, Ashley. That anonymous tip you received about James' other wife? The documents that led you to my address? That was me, she gasped. You. I needed you to find out the truth, but more importantly, I needed you to find out today. Right now, because in about 30 minutes, James is going to walk through that door, fresh from his business trip to Chicago. I made air quotes with my fingers, though we both know he was actually at Emma's soccer tournament in Connecticut. Ashley's hands flew to her mouth. He said he had meetings in Boston. He always was good at keeping his stories straight, I said. Well, mostly straight. That's how I caught him, you know. One tiny slip-up with a dinner receipt, and his whole carefully constructed house of cards started to fall. I pulled out my phone, showing her a banking app. Do you know what else I found while investigating our husband? Offshore accounts, shell companies, a whole network of hidden assets that I'm betting even you didn't know about. She shook her head slowly. James Mitchell, the brilliant investment banker, has been doing more than just managing other people's money. He's been stealing it. Small amounts, cleverly hidden, spread across hundreds of accounts. The kind of theft that's hard to trace unless you know exactly where to look. How do you know all this? Ashley whispered. I smiled. Because before I married James, I worked in forensic accounting, a detail he apparently never bothered to learn about his second wife. Just like he probably doesn't know what you did before becoming a full-time mother. I was a compliance officer at Morgan Stanley, she said quietly. Exactly. He married smart women, Ashley. That was his first mistake. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway made us both turn toward the window. Right on schedule, I said, standing up. Are you ready to help me take down our husband? Ashley stood too, her face hardening with resolve. What do you need me to do? I handed her a document from my envelope. First, we're going to let him walk in and try to explain why there are 2 Mrs. Mitchells in his living room. Then, while he's desperately trying to talk his way out of that situation, you're going to show him this. She looked at the paper, her eyes widening. Is this proof of his financial crimes? Yes, but it's only the beginning. I checked my watch. He'll be coming through that door in about 30 seconds. Remember, let him talk. The more he lies, the deeper he'll dig himself. We heard keys in the lock, and I felt a surge of anticipation. 6 months of planning, of careful documentation and strategic moves had led to this moment. Victoria? James's voice called out. I'm home early. I managed to wrap up those meetings in Chicago. He walked into the living room, his designer briefcase in one hand, a bouquet of apology flowers in the other, his standard gift when he'd been away too long. He froze mid-step when he saw us both standing there. The flowers hit the floor with a soft thud. Hello, darling, I said sweetly. Look who stopped by for coffee. Your wife. James Mitchell had always been good at talking his way out of tight spots. It was what made him such a successful investment banker, that and his complete lack of moral compass, as we discovered. But standing in his perfectly decorated living room, faced with both his wives, even his silver tongue seemed to fail him. I can explain, he stammered, his usual confidence cracking. Can you? Ashley and I spoke in perfect unison, causing him to flinch. It's not what you think, he tried again, his eyes darting between us, probably trying to calculate which one of us was the bigger threat. I smiled, enjoying his discomfort. Really? Because I think this is exactly what it looks like. You married Ashley in 2008 in Cape Cod. Beautiful ceremony, by the way, I saw the photos. Then you married me in 2015 in Aspen, telling each of us that your frequent business trips were just part of being a successful banker. The color drained from his face. How long have you? No. I finished for him. Long enough to find everything, James. Every account, every transfer, every lie. He straightened his tie, a nervous habit I'd noticed over the years. Whatever you think you found, you don't understand the complexities of international finance. Oh, but we do, Ashley cut in, her voice steady. Victoria was kind enough to share all the documentation with me. The shell companies in the Caymans, the missing client funds, the fake investment accounts. You've been stealing for years, I added, pulling out my phone. Small amounts cleverly hidden. But you got sloppy, James, just like you got sloppy with that dinner receipt. His face hardened. You can't prove anything. I pressed play on my phone. His voice filled the room. Just move the Johnson Fund through the usual channels. By the time anyone notices, it'll be spread across so many accounts they'll never trace it. That's from 3 weeks ago, I said calmly. Your call with Marcus about the pension fund theft. I have hundreds more recordings, James. Every meeting, every call, every confession. He lunged for my phone, but I was ready for that. Ashley stepped between us, her own phone raised. I wouldn't, she said coldly. Everything's already been backed up and sent to secure servers. If anything happens to either of us, it all goes straight to the FBI. James collapsed onto the sofa, his perfectly tailored suit suddenly looking rumpled and wrong. What do you want? Want? I laughed. We want everything, James. Every penny you've stolen, every asset you've hidden. You're going to sign everything over to a victim restitution fund. You can't be serious, he scoffed. You'll get nothing. You'll both be disgraced when this comes out. Will we? Ashley pulled out another document, because according to these records, we're both innocent victims of your fraud. In fact, we're the ones who uncovered it and reported it. You already reported. His voice trailed off as realization hit him. Not yet, I said softly. You have 1 hour to sign these papers, transferring everything to the restitution fund. If you do, you might only serve 5 years. If you don't, I shrugged. Well, the FBI is very interested in investment fraud these days. His face contorted with rage. You manipulative buy. Careful, Ashley cut him off. Remember those recordings. Everything you say or do right now is being documented. As if to prove her point, a small red light blinked from the bookshelf. One of many cameras I'd installed months ago. James's shoulders slumped. You planned this. All of it. From the moment I found that receipt, I confirmed. The anonymous tip to Ashley, the evidence gathering, the recordings, all of it leading to this moment. You should have done your homework, James, before marrying a forensic accountant and a compliance officer. He looked up, desperation replacing anger. We can work something out. I have more money hidden away. We could split it, the 3 of us. Still trying to negotiate? I shook my head. It's over, James. The only choice you have left is whether you want to do this the easy way or the hard way. James chose the hard way. I watched from my office window 3 days later as FBI agents let him out in handcuffs. He'd spent those 3 days trying to move money, delete records, and call in favors, all of which failed because Ashley and I had already frozen every account, backed up every record, and warned every contact. Mrs. Mitchell. An FBI agent appeared at my door. We've finished collecting evidence from a home office. We'll need you to come down to give a formal statement tomorrow. I nodded, suppressing a smile at the Mrs. Mitchell, soon to be former, along with Ashley. We both filed for annulment, citing fraud and bigamy. Our lawyers assured us it would be straightforward, especially given James' other crimes. My phone buzzed. Ashley. It's done, her text read. Just watch them raid the Connecticut house. Emma's okay, confused, but okay. I'd grown to respect Ashley over the past few days. She handled the destruction of her 15-year marriage with remarkable strength, focusing on protecting her daughter and helping bring James to justice. The final tally of James's theft was staggering. $67 million, stolen from various clients over a decade. The victims' restitution fund we'd set up would restore most of their losses, thanks to our careful tracking of his hidden assets. As for his legitimate assets, the houses, cars, art collections, they'd be sold to compensate his victims too. Ashley and I had made sure our names were clear legally, but we wanted no part of wealth built on stolen money. Victoria? Ashley stood in my doorway, Emma beside her. Can we come in? I gestured them inside. Emma, at 13, looked so much like her mother, the same determined set to her jaw, the same sharp intelligence in her eyes. I want to thank you, Ashley said, sitting down. Not just for uncovering everything, but for how you handled it, for thinking of Emma in all this. I smiled at the girl. Your mom's the real hero here. She could have just taken the evidence and turned James in, but she worked with me to make sure we could recover the money for his victims. Emma spoke up, her voice quiet but firm. Did you ever love him? Either of you? Ashley and I exchanged glances. It was a question we'd both been avoiding. I loved who I thought he was, I said finally. The successful, charming man who seemed to care about doing good in the world. But that man never existed. I loved him for 15 years, Ashley added. But looking back, there were always signs. The inconsistencies, the long absences, the way he compartmentalized his life. I just didn't want to see them. Emma nodded, processing this. What happens now? Now, I said, pulling out a folder, we move forward. Your mom mentioned you're interested in finance. The girl's eyes lit up. Yeah, I want to help people protect their money, make sure nobody else can do what Dad did. Well, I handed her some brochures. I've started a foundation with part of my consulting firm's profits. We're going to fund scholarships for students interested in financial crimes prevention and victim advocacy. You'd be a perfect candidate in a few years. Ashley squeezed her daughter's shoulder. See, something good can come from this. As they left, I turned back to my window. The FBI vehicles were gone, along with James. The life I thought I had, perfect marriage, wealthy husband, glamorous lifestyle, had vanished too. But in its place was something real. Integrity, justice, and an unexpected friendship with the woman who should have been my rival. My phone buzzed one last time, a news alert. James' arrest was already making headlines. Prominent banker charged in massive fraud scheme. Below was a quote from his lawyer. Mr. Mitchell maintains his innocence and claims he was set up by his wives. I laughed out loud. Even now, he couldn't take responsibility. But it didn't matter anymore. The evidence spoke for itself, and James Mitchell would spend the next 20 years in federal prison learning a hard lesson about underestimating women. That evening, Ashley, Emma, and I had dinner together. Not at some expensive restaurant, but at my small apartment downtown. My real home, not the showcase house James had bought with stolen money. To new beginnings, Ashley raised her glass of wine. To justice, I added. To family, Emma said quietly, even if it's not the kind we expected. We clinked glasses, three women brought together by one man's betrayal, now united in something stronger than marriage certificates or legal documents. Truth, trust, and the satisfaction of knowing we turned his lies into something good. Later, as I got ready for bed, I found one last reminder of James, a photo from our wedding. We looked so happy, so in love. But now I could see what I'd missed then, the calculation in his eyes, the practiced nature of his smile. I dropped the photo in the shredder, listening to the satisfying whir as it disappeared. Some people might call what we did revenge. I prefer to think of it as justice, not just for us, but for every person James had stolen from, lied to, betrayed. The next morning, I walked into my consulting firm with my head high. On my desk was a stack of letters, thank you notes from James's victims who were already receiving restitution payments. Each one reminded me that sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about rebuilding what they broke stronger than before. And as for James, last I heard, he was adjusting to life in federal prison, probably still trying to charm his way out of consequences. But this time there was no escape, no clever argument, no wife to manipulate. Just 20 years to think about the women he underestimated and the justice they served. The cafe in Montmartre was exactly the kind of place Rebecca would choose. Elegant, overpriced, and perfect for people who wanted to be seen. I watched her through the window, sipping her 15 euros latte while scrolling through her phone, not a care in the world. She hadn't changed much in 5 years. Same perfectly styled blonde hair, same designer clothes, same air of casual superiority. The only difference was that now she was living off our parents' retirement savings, all $4.2 million of them. My name is Sarah Matthews, and I've spent the last 5 years hunting down my sister. Not for revenge, though God knows I wanted it. No, this was about justice, about making things right for our parents who now worked retail jobs in their 70s because their brilliant investment advisor daughter had cleaned up their accounts and disappeared. I checked my watch, 2:45 p.m. Right on schedule. Taking a deep breath, I adjusted my dark wig and sunglasses, picked up my designer handbag, a clever fake, and walked into the cafe. Bonjour, I said to the hostess in carefully practiced French. I'm meeting someone. Ah, there she is. I pointed to Rebecca's table by the window. Before the hostess could stop me, I walked over and sat down across from my sister. Rebecca looked up, annoyed at the intrusion, then froze as I removed my sunglasses. Hi, Bex, I said quietly, using her childhood nickname. Long time no see. The color drained from her face. Sarah? What? How did you find you? I smiled, though there was no warmth in it. That's an interesting story. Almost as interesting as how you managed to forge Mom and Dad's signatures on those transfer documents. She glanced toward the door, calculating. I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. Could she make a run for it? Create a scene? Call security? Don't bother, I said, opening my handbag and pulling out a manila envelope. Running won't help. Not this time. What do you want? She hissed, her perfectly manicured hands clenching around her coffee cup. Money? Is that it? Come to guilt-trip me into sharing. I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make heads turn at nearby tables. Money? You think that's why I spent 5 years tracking you down? No, Bex. I'm here because you destroyed our family, and now you're going to help me fix it. She leaned back, some of her old confidence returning. Or what? You'll tell the police? Go ahead. There's no proof I did anything wrong. The transfers were all legal, signed and notarized. I opened the envelope and slid out a stack of papers. Actually, that's where you're wrong. See, while you were living up in Paris, I've been very, very busy. Her eyes flickered to the documents, then back to my face. What is this? This, I said, tapping the papers, is everything. Every forged document, every fake signature, every illegal transfer, and most importantly, proof of where the money went. Would you like to know how I found it all? She didn't answer, but I could see fear creeping into her eyes. It started with Dad's signature on the final transfer form. I continued. You were always good at forgery. Remember all those report cards you used to fake in high school? But you made one mistake. Dad's arthritis was acting up that week, and his signature would have been shakier than usual. Yours was perfect, too perfect. Rebecca's hand trembled as she reached for the papers, but I pulled them back. That got me thinking, what else had you faked? So I did some digging. A lot of digging. Did you know Mom kept all their old bank statements? Every single one, going back 20 years. It took months, but I compared every signature, every document, every transaction. You're bluffing, she whispered, but we both knew she didn't believe that. I pulled out my phone and opened a series of photos. This is you at HSBC Paris, opening an account under the name Rebecca Laurent. This is you transferring funds through 3 different shell companies, and this, I swiped to the last image, is you meeting with Jean-Paul Dupont last week. She flinched at the name. How do you know about Jean-Paul? Your business partner? The one helping you launder money through his art gallery? Oh, I know all about him, including the fact that he's already under investigation by the French Financial Crimes Unit. For the first time, real fear showed on my sister's face. Sarah, listen. No, I cut her off. You listen. In about 30 seconds, a man is going to walk through that door. He's from Interpol's Financial Crimes Division. The only reason he's not already here is because I convinced him to give me a chance to talk to you first. She glanced at the door, panic rising in her eyes. But, I continued, there might be another option. If you're interested. Rebecca's eyes snapped back to me. What kind of option? I pulled out another envelope. The kind that keeps you out of prison. But trust me. Sister dear, you're not going to like it. The cafe door chimed as it opened. Rebecca's face went white as she saw the tall man in a dark suit walk in. Time's up, I said softly. What's it going to be? Rebecca's hand shot across the table, grabbing the second envelope. What do you want? She whispered urgently, eyes darting between me and the Interpol agent who was now speaking quietly with the hostess. I smiled, feeling a grim satisfaction at seeing my usually composed sister so rattled. It's quite simple, really. You're going to give the money back. All of it. She let out a strangled laugh. Simple? Sarah, I can't just. It's not that easy. The money's tied up in investments, properties. You mean the art gallery, the townhouse in the 16th arrondissement, the Swiss bank accounts. I leaned forward. I told you, Bex, I know everything. The Interpol agent was slowly making his way through the cafe, apparently checking each table. We had maybe 2 minutes left. Even if I wanted to, Rebecca hissed, I can't liquidate everything immediately. It would take time. 3 days, I said firmly. You have 3 days to transfer everything back to our parents' accounts. The routing numbers are in that envelope, along with instructions for how to make it look legitimate. Her eyes narrowed. And if I don't? I nodded toward the approaching agent. Then I stopped stalling him. Everything I've discovered goes to Interpol, the FBI, and the French authorities. You'll spend the next decade in prison, and Jean Paul right along with you. You do that? To your own sister? My sister? I felt a surge of anger. My sister died the day she stole our parents' future and ran away to Paris. You're just the criminal wearing her face. The agent was just 2 tables away now. Rebecca's hands shook as she opened the envelope, scanning the contents quickly. 3 days, she asked, her voice barely audible. I nodded. And Rebecca? If you try to run, if you try to hide the money, if you do anything except exactly what those instructions say. I gestured to the approaching agent. Well, let's just say this is only a small taste of what I can do. She swallowed hard, then forced a smile as the agent reached our table. Mademoiselles, he said politely, I apologize for the interruption. We are conducting a routine check. I held up my hand, speaking in French. No need, Inspector Rousseau. My sister and I were just finishing our conversation. Weren't we, Bex? Rebecca clutched the envelope to her chest and nodded. Yes, we were. I stood up, gathering my things. Remember, 3 days. Don't disappoint me again. As I walked out of the cafe, I heard Rebecca engaging the inspector in rapid French, probably trying to appear normal, unworthy of suspicion. But I knew her too well. She was already planning, calculating, trying to figure out a way around this. What she didn't know was that I had planned for that too. Back in my hotel room, I called the one person who had helped make this all possible. It's done, I told Marcus, my voice finally betraying my exhaustion. She took the bait. Marcus, my best friend since college and now one of the top forensic accountants in New York, chuckled. Of course she did. You didn't give her a choice. But do you really think she'll do it? Return the money? I sat down heavily on the bed, kicking off my heels. She'll try to find a way out first. Probably contact some of her shadier friends, look for escape routes. But when those fall through, when they fall through because we've already blocked them all, Marcus interjected. Right. When she realizes she's truly trapped, she'll follow the instructions. Rebecca's a survivor. She'll choose losing the money over losing her freedom. And the inspector? He play his part well? I smiled, remembering the look on Rebecca's face. Perfectly. She never suspected he was just an actor I hired. Having him there made everything else I said more credible. Speaking of credible, Marcus said, his tone turning serious. What about the real authorities? You know she's actually guilty of everything you accused her of. I know, I sighed. But prosecuting her wouldn't get our parents' money back. This way, if she cooperates, everyone wins. She stays out of jail, our parents get their retirement back, and I paused. And you what? And I can finally stop hunting her. Stop letting her take up space in my head. After hanging up, I walked to the window. Paris sparkled in the evening light, the Eiffel Tower beginning to glow against the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, my sister was probably frantically trying to find a way to outsmart me. Let her try. I'd spent 5 years becoming an expert in financial crimes just to understand how she'd done it. I learned French, studied international banking laws, built a network of contacts in the financial world. I'd sacrificed my own career, used up my savings, dedicated every waking moment to this pursuit. Rebecca had always underestimated me. To her, I was just the quiet younger sister who played by the rules. She never understood that playing by the rules had taught me exactly how to break them when necessary. My phone buzzed. A text from one of my contacts at the airport. Rebecca had just tried to book a flight to Singapore, only to find her passports, all 3 of them, mysteriously blacklisted. Another buzz, her attempt to wire money to a Cayman Islands account had been blocked. A third message, her call to Jean-Paul had gone straight to voicemail because he was currently in police custody on unrelated charges. Charges that would disappear once Rebecca returned our parents' money, though she didn't know that part yet. I smiled as the messages kept coming in. Every escape route closing, every backup plan failing. I'd spent 5 years building this cage around her, making it look like coincidence and bad luck rather than careful planning. By tomorrow, she'd realize she was trapped. By the day after, she'd understand that her only way out was through me. And on the 3rd day, our parents would wake up to find their accounts restored, their future secured. As for Rebecca, well, that would depend entirely on her next move. On the 3rd morning, I sat in my hotel room watching the numbers on my laptop screen. 3 separate banking apps were open, each showing our parents' accounts. At exactly 9:00 a.m. Paris time, the first transfer came through, 1.2 million euros. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. It's starting. She's actually doing it. I didn't reply, my eyes fixed on the screen as more transfers appeared. By 9:15, the total had reached 2.8 million euros. Rebecca was cutting it close. She had until noon to complete the transfers according to my instructions. At 11:30, my phone rang. Rebecca. I've done it, she said without preamble, her voice tight. Every cent. Are you happy now? I checked the final totals. $4.2 million, exactly what she'd stolen. You did what you had to do, nothing more. So that's it, she laughed bitterly. You've ruined everything I built here, and now you just walk away. Everything you built? I felt my careful control slipping. You built nothing, Rebecca. You stole from our parents, from the people who gave you everything. They're working at Walmart at 70 years old because of you. There was a long pause. I never meant for that to happen, she said quietly. I had debts. And then an opportunity came up, and I thought I could double their money, make everything right. Save it? I cut her off. I don't care about your excuses. The money's back where it belongs. That's all that matters. What am I supposed to do now? For the first time, she sounded scared. I have nothing left. You have exactly what you deserve, I replied. But since you complied with my demands, I'll keep my end of the bargain. The authorities won't hear about this from me. Sarah, wait. I hung up, cutting off whatever plea or manipulation she was about to attempt. 5 years of pursuit, of sacrifice and determination, and it ended with a simple phone call. My hands were shaking as I dialed another number, home. Hello, my mother's voice, tired from another early morning shift. Mom, you should check your bank account. What? Sarah, what are you talking about? Just look, Mom. Please. I heard shuffling, the clicking of a keyboard, then silence. Mom? A sob broke through the phone. Sarah, how, is this real? It's real, Mom, all of it. You and Dad can retire now. For real this time. But how did you? She stopped. Rebecca, you found her? Yes, I said simply. I found her. Where is she? Is she okay? Classic mom, still worried about her eldest daughter even after everything. She's fine. Better than she deserves to be, but she won't bother us again. After promising to explain everything when I got home, I hung up and walked to the window. Paris was bright and clear, the morning sun glinting off the buildings. Somewhere out there, My sister was probably already planning her next move, figuring out how to rebuild. That was who she was, always moving forward, never looking back at the damage she left behind. But this time, she'd be doing it without our parents' money, without the safety net she'd stolen. My phone buzzed again. Marcus, you did it. It's really over. I typed back, not quite. One more thing to do. Opening my laptop, I sent a single email to Jean-Paul Dupont's lawyer. As promised, the evidence that would clear him of his current legal troubles was attached. Honor among thieves, even if they didn't know they were working for me. Then I began booking my flight home. But not before sending one final message, but one that would ensure she could never pull this kind of scam again. Ask Rebecca Matthews about the $4.2 million she stole from her elderly parents. Ask her what happened when her sister caught up with her. Petty, maybe, but sometimes justice needs a little help spreading the word. As I packed my bags, I thought about the past 5 years. I put my life on hold, spent every resource I had, learned things I never wanted to know about the dark side of international finance. Was it worth it? My phone buzzed one last time, a photo from Dad. He was holding his retirement notice, grinning like I hadn't seen him grin in years. Mom was beside him, crying happy tears. Yeah, it was worth it. That evening, as my plane took off from Charles de Gaulle Airport, I looked down at the city where my sister had hidden for so long. Paris would recover from Rebecca Matthews. Cities always do. Just like our family would recover, stronger now that the wound had been cleaned and bandaged. I thought about Rebecca, probably already working on her next reinvention. Part of me wondered if I should feel guilty about taking everything from her. But then I remembered our parents working doubles at minimum wage jobs because their daughter had stolen their dreams. No, I decided. Rebecca had made her choices. Now she had to live with the consequences. As for me, I had a family to go home to and a life to restart. 5 years of obsession and pursuit had changed me, taught me things about myself I never knew. I was stronger than I'd thought, more capable than anyone, including Rebecca, had ever given me credit for. My phone buzzed one last time as we reached cruising altitude, a text from an unknown number. This isn't over, little sister. I smiled, typing back, yes, Rebecca, it is. And if you ever try anything like this again, remember, I'll find you. I'll always find you. Then I turned off my phone, ordered a glass of champagne, and watched the sun set over the clouds. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about protecting the people they tried to hurt. Our parents had their future back. Rebecca had her consequence. And me? I had my peace. The late afternoon sun streamed through the windows of my corner office as I reviewed the latest acquisition reports. Stellar Solutions had just secured another major contract, one that used to belong to Morgan Industries, my ex-husband's company. My phone buzzed. James' name flashed across the screen, making my heart skip a beat. We hadn't spoken in 3 years, not since the divorce. Not since he told me I was just a secretary who would never amount to anything without him. Olivia? His voice was strained, missing its usual arrogance. I need to meet with you. It's important. My name is Olivia Chen, and at 42, I built something James Morgan never thought I could, a technology consulting firm that was revolutionizing the industry, the same industry where his company was now struggling to survive. James, I kept my voice neutral. This is unexpected. Please, he said, the words sounding foreign from him. Just one meeting. The Plaza Hotel, tomorrow at noon. I glanced at my calendar, already knowing it was clear. I've been expecting this call for weeks, watching Morgan Industries' stock price plummet. Fine, 1 hour. After hanging up, I called my CFO and closest friend, Sarah Mitchell. He finally called. About time, she replied. The latest reports show Morgan Industries lost 40% of their market share this quarter. Most of it to us. I smiled, remembering how this all started. 3 years ago, I was indeed James's secretary, and his wife. For 15 years, I'd supported his dreams, organized his meetings, smoothed over his mistakes, all while taking night classes in business and technology, building skills he never knew about. Then came the Ashley incident. I'd found the emails by accident while organizing his desktop, messages to his 25-year-old marketing director, full of promises and plans. Plans that included divorcing his dead-weight wife who was holding him back. "You've never understood business, Olivia," he'd sneered when I confronted him. "You're just a secretary. That's all you'll ever be." The divorce was quick. James was so confident in my insignificance that he didn't even fight my request for my savings and investment account. Money I'd been quietly setting aside for years, preparing for a future he couldn't imagine. "Should I prepare the quarterly reports for tomorrow's meeting?" Sarah's voice brought me back to the present. "Yes," I said, "and bring the Morrison contract details. James doesn't know we landed that one yet." The Morrison contract had been Morgan Industries' biggest account for a decade, until last week when they switched to Stellar Solutions, my company. The next day, I arrived at the Plaza Hotel 15 minutes early, choosing a quiet table with a view of the park. James walked in at exactly noon, looking older than his 45 years. His designer suit couldn't hide the worry lines around his eyes. "Olivia," he said, sitting down. "You look different." I was different. Gone was the meek secretary in sensible shoes. Today I wore a tailored Channel suit and Louboutins, success evident in every detail. "What do you want, James?" He shifted uncomfortably, pride warring with desperation. "I'm sure you've heard about Morgan Industries' recent challenges." "I try to stay informed about market conditions," I replied mildly, sipping my water. "We're losing clients," he admitted. "Major accounts that we've had for years. The board is talking about replacing me. He paused, the words clearly painful, "I need your help." I raised an eyebrow. "My help? I'm just a secretary, remember?" His face flushed. I was wrong to say that. You were always more than that. The truth is, no one understood our operations like you did. The clients trusted you. If you came back, help me rebuild those relationships. You want me to come back to Morgan Industries." I kept my voice level, though inside I was laughing at the irony. "As COO," he said quickly, "full partnership. Whatever you want. Just help me save the company." I studied him, thinking about all the years I'd spent in his shadow. How he dismissed my ideas, belittled my ambitions, cheated on me with someone he thought was more on his level. "And what makes you think I can help?" I asked. "Stellar Solutions seems to be dominating the market these days. Maybe you should talk to them." James's face darkened. "Stellar Solutions. They came out of nowhere 2 years ago and started poaching our clients. Nobody even knows who runs it, some anonymous CEO who never makes public appearances." I smiled, reaching into my briefcase. "Actually, James, that's not quite true." I pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. He picked it up, his face going pale as he read. "Olivia Chen, CEO and founder, Stellar Solutions." "No," he whispered. "This is impossible." "You couldn't?" "Couldn't what?" I asked softly. "Couldn't build a successful company? Couldn't innovate in ways you never imagined? Couldn't take everything you taught me and do it better?" He stared at me, recognition finally dawning. The Morrison contract, the new software platform, the client migrations. It was all you. I nodded, enjoying the shock on his face. "Turns out I understand business quite well. And now you want my help saving the company that you once said I wasn't qualified to work for." "Olivia, please," he leaned forward, desperation clear in his voice. "I know I treated you terribly. I know I underestimated you. But people's jobs are at stake. The company my father built. The company you ran into the ground," I corrected him, "while chasing younger women and ignoring innovation." His face hardened. "So this is revenge. You built all this just to destroy me?" I stood up, gathering my things. "No, James. I built this because I could. Because while you were busy underestimating me, I was learning, growing, preparing. Your company's failure isn't my revenge. It's simply the market recognizing superior service and innovation." "Wait," he called as I turned to leave. "What am I supposed to do?" I paused, looking back at him. "You wanted to meet to discuss terms. Here they are. Stellar Solutions will consider acquiring Morgan Industries at a fair market price, which given your current situation isn't much. You'll step down naturally." "You want me to sell you my company?" His voice cracked with disbelief. "No, James. I want you to face the consequences of your choices. But I'm offering you a way to protect your employees and your father's legacy. Think about it." As I walked out of the Plaza Hotel, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "How did it go?" I smiled, stepping into my waiting car. Prepare the acquisition paperwork. James Morgan just learned what a secretary can do. The next morning, I arrived at Stellar Solutions headquarters earlier than usual. The modern glass building reflected the rising sun, a far cry from Morgan Industries' aging offices across town. Sarah was waiting in my office, acquisition documents spread across the conference table. The numbers just came in, she said, handing me a tablet. Morgan Industries stock dropped another 15% overnight. Word about James seeking a buyer must have leaked. I scrolled through the financial reports, noting how far his company had fallen. What's their current market value? About a quarter of what it was 3 years ago, Sarah replied, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. We could buy them for less than what you got in the divorce settlement. The irony wasn't lost on me. James had been so eager to end our marriage quickly, to start his new life with Ashley, that he'd barely glanced at the settlement terms. He never questioned why I only wanted my personal savings and investment account, never wondered what I planned to do with it. My phone buzzed. A message from James. We need to talk. Coming to your office. I showed the message to Sarah, who raised an eyebrow. Want me to have security turn him away? No, I said, settling behind my desk. Let him come. It's time he saw exactly what I've built. 20 minutes later, my assistant's voice came through the intercom. Ms. Chen, Mr. Morgan is here. Send him in. James walked into my office, stopping short as he took in the space. The view of the city, the elegant modern furniture, the wall of industry awards, everything screamed success and power. Quite a step up from a secretary's desk, I commented, noting his reaction. He sat down heavily in one of the visitor chairs. How did you do it? All of this in just 3 years? I didn't, I replied calmly. I spent 15 years preparing for this, learning the industry, understanding client needs, developing innovations. You just never noticed because you were too busy looking down on me. The new project management platform, he said slowly. The one that's revolutionizing how clients handle their workflows. That was your idea, wasn't it? The one you tried to tell me about 2 years before. Before you told me to stick to answering phones. I finished for him. Yes, that was mine, along with several other innovations you dismissed. He ran a hand through his graying hair. And Ashley, did you know about her before? The emails? I kept my voice neutral. Yes, I knew. Just like I knew about Jessica in accounting and Michelle in HR. I knew everything, James. I was your secretary, remember? His face flushed with shame. Olivia, save it. I cut him off. I didn't build Stellar Solutions for revenge. I built it because I saw opportunities you were too arrogant to notice. The fact that it's now in a position to acquire Morgan Industries is just poetic justice. Sarah walked in then, right on schedule, carrying more financial reports. Ms. Chen, the board is ready for the acquisition meeting whenever you are. James looked between us, realization dawning. You're really going to do this? Buy my company? Your father's company, I corrected him. The one you inherited and nearly destroyed. And yes, I'm offering to buy it, at a fair price, with guarantees to protect the employees. The employees, he repeated bitterly. You mean the ones who've been jumping ship to work for you? I smiled. You mean like David from engineering? Or Patricia from client services? Yes, I hired them. Along with dozens of other talented people you undervalued. Just like you undervalued me. Sarah handed him a thick folder. These are the preliminary acquisition terms. Our lawyers have already reviewed everything. The offer expires in 48 hours. James stared at the folder like it might bite him. And if I refuse? Then Morgan Industries continues its decline. I said simply, your stock price keeps falling, more clients leave, and eventually the board forces you out anyway. But by then, the company won't be worth saving. He opened the folder, scanning the first page. His face paled. This is less than half what the company was worth last year. That's the market rate, Sarah interjected. Based on your current financial situation and client exodus. Client exodus, he laughed harshly. You mean the clients you stole? I leaned forward. I didn't steal anything, James. I offered better service, better technology, and better value. The same things I tried to tell you we should be doing 3 years ago. And Ashley, he asked suddenly. Where is she in all this? Your former marketing director. She left 6 months ago. Apparently, the startup she joined offered her a better opportunity. I did mention that the startup was a Stellar Solutions subsidiary. James stood up abruptly, the folder clutched in his hand. I need time to think. 48 hours, I reminded him. After that, the offer expires and whatever happens to Morgan Industries is out of my hands. As he walked out, shoulders slumped in defeat, Sarah turned to me. That was almost too easy. No, I said quietly, watching him through the glass walls as he waited for the elevator. The hard part was the 15 years I spent being invisible. This is just business. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of meetings and preparations. Word of the potential acquisition had leaked to the business press, sending Morgan Industries stock into an even steeper decline. I was reviewing the latest numbers when my assistant buzzed. Ms. Chen, Mr. Morgan Sr. is here to see you. I straightened in my chair. Robert Morgan, James's father and the founder of Morgan Industries. I hadn't seen him since the divorce. Send him in. Robert walked in slowly, leaning on his cane. At 75, he'd been retired for 5 years, leaving the company in James's hands. A decision he was probably regretting now. Olivia, he said, taking a seat. You've done well for yourself. Hello, Robert. This is unexpected. He looked around my office, nodding appreciatively. I always knew you were smart, smarter than James gave you credit for. But this, he gestured at the view, the awards, this is impressive. Thank you, I said carefully. I assume James told you about the offer. He did. Robert set his cane aside. He also told me about Ashley, about how he treated you. I wanted to apologize. I blinked, surprised. You don't owe me an apology, Robert. Yes, I do, he insisted. I saw how he was changing, becoming arrogant, taking you for granted. I should have said something. I studied the old man's face, seeing genuine regret there. Robert had always been kind to me, treating me more like a daughter than an employee. What James did or didn't do isn't your fault, I said gently. We all make our own choices. Yes, he agreed, we do. And now I need to make one more. He pulled out the acquisition paperwork, signed and notarized. As majority shareholder, I'm accepting your offer. I stared at the documents. Does James know? He does now. I just came from telling him. Robert's hands trembled slightly as he set the papers on my desk. The company I built, it deserves better than what it's become. You can save it, make it something worthwhile again. Just then, my phone buzzed with an urgent message from security. Miss Chen, Mr. James Morgan is on his way up. He seems agitated. Robert sighed. I was afraid of this. Moments later, James burst into my office, his face red with anger. You went behind my back? To my own father. I didn't, I said calmly. Robert came to me. The board meets in an hour, Robert cut in. They'll approve the sale. It's done, son. James turned on his father. How could you? This company was my inheritance. An inheritance you squandered, Robert replied sharply. You inherited my company, but none of my values. Olivia built something remarkable while you were busy destroying what I spent 40 years creating. I watched the interplay between father and son, remembering all the times James had bragged about his birthright, his destiny to lead Morgan Industries. Security is on their way up, Sarah announced from the doorway. That won't be necessary, I said standing. James is leaving. Aren't you, James? He looked between his father and me, defeat finally settling over his features. What am I supposed to do now? Start over, I suggested. Build something of your own instead of relying on inheritance. That's what I did. Later that evening, after all the papers were signed and the press releases drafted, I sat in my office looking at an old photo. It was from my early days at Morgan Industries, me at my secretary's desk, smiling up at the camera. James stood behind me, looking every bit the successful executive. Sarah knocked gently on my door. First round of transition starts tomorrow. You ready? I put the photo away. More than ready. How many Morgan employees have applied to stay on? Almost 80%, she replied. Turns out a lot of them are excited to work for you. They've seen what we've built here. The integration of Morgan Industries into Stellar Solutions took 6 months. We kept most of the employees, implementing the innovations and improvements I'd envisioned years ago. The company's value doubled within the first year. James moved to Florida, using his portion of the sale to start a small consulting firm. Last I heard, he was doing moderate business, nothing spectacular. Ashley had moved on to another startup, and Robert occasionally sent me emails checking on the company's progress. 1 year after the acquisition, I stood on the stage at the Industry Leadership Awards, accepting Company of the Year. Looking out at the audience, my employees, both old and new, working together seamlessly, I felt a sense of completion. Success isn't about inheritance or birthright, I said in my acceptance speech. It's about vision, determination, and the courage to believe in yourself even when others don't. Sometimes the biggest obstacles become our greatest opportunities if we're brave enough to see them that way. Later that night, I received an unexpected email from James. I finally understand what you tried to tell me all those years ago. About innovation, about valuing people, about really seeing them. I'm sorry I was too blind to learn from you then. Congratulations on the award. You earned it. I didn't reply. Some chapters are better left closed. The next morning, I walked into Stellar Solutions headquarters, now twice the size it had been before the acquisition. The lobby displayed both companies' histories, including a photo of Robert Morgan founding his company 45 years ago. Ms. Chen, my assistant, caught up with me at the elevator. The new technology team has finished the prototype you asked for, the one based on your original proposal from 3 years ago. I smiled, remembering how James had dismissed that same proposal. Schedule a demonstration for tomorrow. Let's show everyone what happens when good ideas find the right home. As I settled into my office, I looked out at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, a former secretary was probably dreaming of something bigger, better, more than what others tell her she can be. I hoped she'd find the courage to prove them wrong, just as I had. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying what others build, it's building something better yourself. Something so undeniably successful that they're forced to acknowledge what they failed to see all along. And sometimes, the person they underestimated becomes the person they have to answer to. That's not just business. That's justice.